At 70, the tragedy of Denzel Washington isn't written in downfall. It's written in discipline, faith, and fire. He's one of the last true giants of Hollywood, a man who built greatness from pain and turned silence into strength. But behind the Oscars, the glory, and the fame lies a story few have ever heard of heartbreak, sacrifice, and redemption. What did it truly cost Denzel Washington to become the man the world calls unbreakable? Stay till the end, because what's hidden behind his smile might just change how you see success forever. Before the fame, before the awards, before the applause, there was a boy from Mount Vernon, New York. Born on December 28, 1954, he grew up in a working-class neighborhood where faith and struggle lived side by side. His mother, Lennis Washington, was a determined woman who owned a small beauty salon. Her hands were rough, her heart unshakable. His father, Reverend Denzel Hayes Washington Sr., was a strict Pentecostal minister, a man of the pulpit and the streets, preaching fire on Sundays and working city jobs during the week. Their home was filled with prayer, but not with affection. "My mother was city," Denzel once said. "My father was country. Opposites attract, and then they separate." When Denzel was 14, his parents' marriage quietly fell apart. No shouting, no chaos, just an emptiness that replaced the sound of family. That silence would follow him for years. It became the first wound he ever carried, and the reason he would later bring such depth and pain to his roles. The boy who once sang gospel in the kitchen suddenly learned how to live with loneliness. After the divorce, Denzel Washington began to drift. The streets of Mount Vernon were filled with boys chasing danger, and he could have easily become one of them. But his mother, Lennis Washington, saw what was coming. She was terrified that the world would swallow her son whole. So she made a decision that felt like betrayal, but was really an act of love. She sent him away to the Oakland Military Academy in New Windsor, New York. For a 14-year-old boy, it felt like exile. Cold mornings, shouted orders, boots striking pavement. Yet within that harsh environment, something inside him began to change. The discipline that once felt like punishment slowly became purpose. Years later, he would say, "My mother saved my life." Those early mornings and endless drills forged endurance, humility, and quiet strength, the core of the man he would become. When Denzel entered Fordham University in the early 1970s, he had nothing but faith and grit. He worked odd jobs, sweeping floors, carrying boxes, delivering newspapers, anything to get by. Hunger was a familiar companion, and the glowing skyline of New York City seemed both close and unreachable. But fate intervened one summer while he worked at a YMCA camp. A counselor asked him to fill in for a missing performer at a talent show. Reluctantly, he agreed. The moment he stepped on stage, the room came alive. A woman leaned forward and told him, "You were born to act." For the first time, Denzel believed it. That single spark changed his destiny. He returned to Fordham, switched his major to drama, and never looked back. His first major break came with the TV movie Wilma, where he met Pauletta Pearson, the calm, graceful woman who would become his wife and his anchor through it all. Then came the films that defined him: Cry Freedom, Glory, Malcolm X, Philadelphia, The Hurricane, and Training Day. Each role carried the same spirit of the boy who once struggled to find his place in the world. He didn't just act pain, he remembered it. When he shouted for freedom as Malcolm X, you could hear the echo of a child calling for connection. When he fought through injustice in Glory or stood strong in The Hurricane, you could feel the weight of his past turning into power. But success always comes with a price. Early in his career, he was offered a role that could have made him a star overnight. The script was lucrative but poisoned. It twisted race into spectacle and mocked the very people he came from. He walked away. He later sought advice from the legendary Sidney Poitier, who told him, "The first few roles you choose will define who you are." Denzel listened. From that day forward, he built not just a career, but a legacy. His silence became his protest, his discipline, his armor, his faith, his compass. The years that followed brought both triumph and heartbreak for Denzel Washington. In 1991, while filming Malcolm X, he received a phone call that would change him forever. His father had passed away. There was no final conversation, no goodbye, just silence on the other end of the line. "I didn't cry at his funeral," Denzel later said. "Not because I didn't love him, but because we never really connected." It wasn't coldness. It was the confession of a son still trying to understand what love looks like when it hides behind distance. Years later, he came to see that his father's quietness wasn't absence. It was discipline, duty, and faith disguised as silence. He didn't say, "I love you," Denzel once said, but he built the foundation beneath my life. Then came the loss of those he called friends and kindred spirits. In 2012, the world wept for Whitney Houston, and so did Denzel, privately. He attended her funeral, sitting quietly in the back pew. No cameras, no speeches, just stillness. "She gave everything," he whispered. "And it cost her everything." The pain was heavy, the grief too familiar. But the ache would return again years later, this time with the passing of Chadwick Boseman. Long before Black Panther, when Chadwick was still a struggling student, Denzel had quietly paid for his tuition to a study program at Oxford University. He never mentioned it. When Chadwick discovered the truth, he approached him in tears and said, "You never knew me, but you made it possible for me to be here." Denzel smiled and replied, "That's what we're supposed to do. Pass it on." When Chadwick died at 43, Denzel was devastated. "He gave everything," he said softly. "He was grace." But nothing compared to losing his mother, Lennis Washington, the woman who had saved his life. He still brews 2 cups of coffee each morning, one for himself and one for her, whispering, "You were right, Ma. God did have me." Today, his fortune, estimated at nearly $300 million, tells one kind of success story. But the real legacy lies in what he's given away. For decades, Denzel has quietly supported the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Fordham University, the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, and programs for wounded veterans. He never announces donations, never seeks credit. "If you're going to give," he says, "give quietly. The good will speak for itself." At home in Beverly Hills, his mornings begin with scripture and black coffee. In the evenings, he grills in the backyard as gospel music drifts through the trees. His wife Pauletta still plays the piano. Their children, John David, Katya, Malcolm, and Olivia, share laughter over dinner. And sometimes grandchildren chase fireflies across the lawn. To the world, he's a movie star. To them, he's simply Dad. Even now, he continues to work not for fame, but for purpose. In The Equalizer 3, he returned to the screen as a symbol of power earned through patience, proving that true mastery has no age. Off-set, he mentors young actors, reminding them that in Hollywood, the loudest thing you can be is honest. Ease, he tells them, is a greater threat to progress than hardship. When night falls, Denzel often steps outside, gazing at the lights of Los Angeles. The city that once felt unreachable now hums quietly below. He doesn't chase the noise anymore. He stands still, grateful, alive. The man who once carried the weight of the world now carries only peace. Denzel Washington's life, from a broken home in Mount Vernon to the heights of Hollywood, is proof that faith can shape destiny, that discipline can carve greatness, and that silence can speak louder than fame. He has faced loss without bitterness, success without arrogance, and time without fear. He is the boy who nearly got lost, the man who chose principle over profit, the husband who built the home he never had, the friend who lifted others in secret, and the legend who turned pain into purpose and purpose into light. Greatness for Denzel Washington was never about being seen. It was about being true when no one was watching, and that truth, steady, humble, and unshaken, is what makes him more than a star. It makes him a guide. If the story of Denzel Washington has ever moved you, if his strength, faith, and grace have touched your heart, Honor it not with applause, but with gratitude. Because real legends don't just shine, they guide. This is Denzel Washington, a man who turned pain into purpose. Like, share, and subscribe to celebrate true greatness. Thanks for watching.